Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas playoffs. We started things off with a fast 2-0 with bloodyface taking the victory over Purple, the Zoo Warlock. We're kind of talking about how it could have been a deck of the tournament, but looked like it faltered. Not necessarily maybe because of Purple's decision-making in-game. It could be a decision out-of-game with some of those tech cards not really being the difference maker that Purple was looking for. However, he still has redemption in the lower bracket. I'm currently joined by Abar, who is going to be casting the bloodyface versus justsaiyan match coming up next, which is fairly similar lineups with the Druid, Shaman, Priest, and the Druid, Shaman, Priest, and the Hunter, excuse me, as the fourth deck, both sides.
Very similar. The one major discrepancy is the particular builds of the two Shamans. justsaiyan is rocking the Shaman list without the quest, the evolve, more aggressive, proactive Shaman build that it seems most of the Grandmasters are crediting to Muzzy for the origins of that particular deck list. bloodyface is stuck more to conventional wisdom and has opted for the quest Shaman build, very similar to what we saw throughout Season 2, so it will be interesting to follow if one of those two builds gives one of the players an edge over the other here.
Yeah, and I think that it does actually give the edge, particularly just in the mirror. I personally like having the Evolved Shaman get onto the board faster. It forces your opponent to have specifically that Mogu Flesh Shaper Punish. Mind Control tech really isn't that big of a deal, in my opinion. But at the same time, it's limited experience, right? If you look at it, we've only had Tombs of Doom released for a couple of days before they were able to submit. And they've since been able to play test. Muzzy does have the luxury of being able to play test with his friends. Actually, currently Muzzy is in Greece, I believe.
Yes.
Boot camping with justsaiyan, Hunter Ace, Fino, who I believe is playing host, being in Greece, and Orange as they prepare for not only, of course, playoffs, but Masters Tour Bucharest, which is happening next week in Romania for $500,000. So it's going to be a really cool weekend. It'll be fun to watch from home. I've been kind of going to every Masters Tour myself this year, feeling like I could take a break. And it's also good to see some of the players really fired up because Specialist is back. Or sorry, Specialist is gone. Whew. Almost walked into that one. Specialist is gone, and we're back to Conquest for best of fives. So I want to see, all those people put up. Right, because they're put up or shut up. They're talking about how best of three is like awful, and they hate specialists and all that things. They get best of five conquest back as they've demanded, and we'll see who ends up getting the last laugh, or perhaps we'll see who tries their best and fail yet again, because that's what hard games are. You can't always have the best result despite playing really well.
And to be clear, it is old-fashioned 2015 through 17 Conquest. It is not Shield Phase Conquest, which is the original Conquest is a format that is near and dear to my heart, something that I competed in that particular format when I qualified for a season championship back in 2016, and I particularly enjoy the format. It is my favorite format that Hearthstone has ever been played in competitively. I will be happy to see it back.
All right. Well, we will have a lot of time to take a look at Masters Tour Bucharest in the coming weekend. For now, let's go ahead as we wait for our players to get ready here. I think bloodyface requested a brief break after that intense 2-0 of smashing down that zoo. Let's take a look at what's happened today so far as a recap. So for people at the very beginning of the day that missed it at Asia Pacific, Tom60229 came in and was able to get that win as the first seed. That first initial match actually, I believe, did not happen, as that is a misprint. But Shaxi was the fourth seed, and as a result lost to Surrender, who did end up having that fated match against Tom, which was a very cool all Asia Pacific match back in the 2017 championships. And then Tom, of course, being able to get that last spot with Dawn with his Zoo Warlock lineup. A very unusual twist.
Not unusual for Tom, though. Tom has actually been specifically piloting Zoo for almost the entirety of Season 2 and having a great deal of success with it over in the Asia Pacific region, which the Reno Hunter archetype is more common over there, so that's maybe part of the reason why it gives a little edge to the Zoo. But yeah, it's interesting to see Tom succeeding yet again. We already have Hunter Ace in the semifinals locked in his spot for our European bracket. Tom secured his spot over in the Asia Pacific bracket. A lot of world champion repeats potentially on the horizon here.
Would have been nuts too if Pablo was able to make it through, because that would have been 3 years of consecutive championships. Or world champions be able to make it through, which would be, incidentally, the 3 champions of the HCT circuit seasons. Taking a look at even a little closer to Shaxi, I was a little disappointed to see him not do at least a little better, because he's the only lone rogue player in the entire weekend. Aggro Rogue kind of struggling a little bit, to say the least. But I believe Rogue was banned in that series, so he wasn't even able to play it. Yeah. And then over in Europe, we saw matches happening with Colento and Casey starting things off. Casey kind of ran the gauntlet today, as he played in all matches possible with a quick 2-0 over Colento, and then Yarla ended up stopping him before Casey had to have that match against Tice for that final spot.
And I'm really happy to see that for Yarla specifically. I think he is a player who is right up there amongst the top of the top in terms of the caliber, the quality of his play, but he doesn't always get mentioned in the same category as some of the other elite. Partially, possibly, the fact that his Nordavine teammate sort of steals the spotlight there. He is teammates with Hunter Ace. They practice together from time to time. But I, in my opinion, hold Yarla in that high of a regard that he is worthy of a world championship performance.
Well, I mean, he kind of has done that on HGG. We'll see if he can carry that momentum over tomorrow. In the meantime, the players have indicated that they are ready. Bloodyface and Saiyan with Shaman Protects and Priest Bans. No Priest Mirrors or even matchups whatsoever. It'll come down to how these 3 decks will perform. Quest Druid featuring Kun the Forgotten King from the Tombs of Doom. Highland Hunter with Ragnaros the Fire Lord and Call of the Wild. And Highlander Hunter. And Quest Shaman that has Evolve and Desert Hair, as many people have come to see a few times over this weekend.
I personally am excited to see a double Shaman Protect here. It was something I was expecting more coming into this weekend, frankly, than we have seen. Players have largely stuck to conventional wisdom of protecting their priests so far the last couple of days, but I believe that this aggro shaman, this token version of the new shaman build that we're seeing, the quest list shaman, is going to emerge as the single best deck in the metagame that we will see continue to develop in the coming weeks.
Why do you think so?
It's just incredibly proactive and mana efficient. The strength of plays you can make to develop onto the board for so little mana is truly unbelievable through the combination of Mogu Fleshshaper Mutate, which is already incredibly powerful, but now you threw in Desert Hair Evolve package in there as well, which in and of itself is just a broken, far above the curve turn 4 play. But on top of that, you now have the Evolves to combine with the Mogu Fleshshaper to give you additional redundancy on having an 8-drop on your side of the board far before you are entitled to do so.
Got it. I mean, that does make sense. Having that Shaman early game tempo is really important, really impactful. I do think that part of what makes it less appealing for me is the fact that there's such variance in the draws that feels like sometimes you just have nothing, or you have like awkward combo pieces. I feel like the deck just isn't 100% refined yet. I think we're still figuring out what's the right amount of things to kind of put the Evolve package behind, or how much are we leaving behind tempo-wise. So something that was brought up, I think, even by you, is just like the idea that Shamans aren't generating real big threats anymore. And so if you ever like get to that mid-game in a state where you don't have to really respect the Bloodlust very much, you can just kind of take it a little bit easier and have time to pull off your deck's normal game plan as opposed to playing Keep Away.
And I agree with you that I think redundancy is one of the biggest problems for this more proactive Shaman build, which is why I personally have liked 2 copies of Spirit of the Frog in this list. The Muzzy list that a lot of players gravitated toward includes only 1 copy. I am personally curious to see, as the metagame continues to develop, if 1 copy stays core to the deck, or if we eventually end up making that 2 copies the standard go-to, because that, I think, is where the deck is headed. The players had less than 48 hours to submit their lineup after Tombs of Terror was released to the public. So, as you said, a lot of these deck lists could be far from refined.
I can see Saiyan sitting in the room that several other players like Frozen, and all of them have been playing throughout the course of the weekend. It's almost kind of like we have our own studio over there in a way, where the players are kind of appearing and labbing together, helping each other out, and talking about stuff. And I wonder how much that even factors in over the course of the weekend, right? When we see lineups go at it, you also see players learn things about their decks as they're playing. So I wonder how much is it Saiyan playing a match, and then, you know, as if he gets a break in between the next one, Muzzy come up to him saying like, "Oh, you should actually do this in the next matchup." That kind of stuff is really helpful for players as they continue to grind their way through playoffs, but also have to go up against their friends.
Yeah, that instantaneous feedback is helpful for learning how to pilot these brand new decks. I also think it's helpful for keeping your head in the game, frankly. If you can, you know, step away from your computer after a tough loss and then walk away and discuss the plays with your friends and then maybe encourage you either, hey, you did the best you can, or there were opportunities for you to win if you just took things a little bit differently. I think that puts a lot of competitive Hearthstone players in a better headspace to get that immediate feedback. But Oof is correct. Regardless of which version of the Shaman you prefer to pilot, Desert Hair Evolve is found in both of them these days, and it can be game-breaking. You mentioned Mind Control Tech was a card that came up to you that you felt was not particularly relevant in this Shaman mirror. I will use mirror in quotations here as they are different builds. I would agree with your analysis that I don't feel like it is particularly relevant. The kicker, I think, on the Quest Shaman side is actually the Sandstorm Elemental. That, I feel, is where the Quest version of the deck can find an edge over the Questless version of the deck. Alternatively, due to the very nature of these decks being almost mirrored, I mean, the player who draws the key cards, as you're seeing bloodyface do right now, does have the opportunity to secure an advantage that way as well.
Oof, okay. A decent option, a weird option, and I'm not exactly sure how Summoning Portal is, if it's good or not. I think it's pretty bad based off the idea that Saiyan can get some free trades. There's also 5 minions on the board, so a Voltaic Burst, Desert Hair, Voltaic Burst makes Sea Giant free, but there's also too many minions on the board.
Yeah, he doesn't have the mana to both Desert Hair and Voltaic Burst, as he's overloaded by one.
So Saiyan not able to play the Sea Giant this turn, it looks like.
What to do?
He does, however, have a spell damage totem, which is going to go a long way here, as Zap dealing 3 damage, the Lickum also dealing 3 damage, makes this Voltaic Burst very clean from Saiyan's perspective.
2 Cobalt Lackeys as well. Give him some options.
Yeah, nice efficient full board clear here. I do think it's actually fairly important to get the Summoning Portal off the board.
Former champ evolve. That'd be silly.
There are a lot of battle cries that you reduce their cost by just a little bit, and their effects compound very quickly.
So I was kind of wondering if it was secretly a good thing, if the Summoning Portal was able to stick onto the board.
I would argue it was, but fortunately for Saiyan, he had the luxury, as he spotted, of clearing every single one of Bloodyface's minions that turn. Voltaic Burst, I find incredibly value in this matchup. It is one of the reasons that I like the Questless Evolve Shaman. We have talked in the Hunter versus Shaman matchup about the value of Desert Spear. The ability to deal 1 damage twice is incredibly convenient against Shaman for cleanly clearing off their side of the board. Desert Spear obviously costs 3 mana, but you get to do it repeatedly. Voltaic Burst, you only get to do it once, but it is incredibly mana efficient and helps a lot in the phase of the game where matchup is often decided, but it isn't decided until somebody's out of Desert Hair Evolves.
Does he want to hero power first?
If he wants the hero power at all, he certainly wants to do it first. He was weighing the option between that or the evil totem. I think tempo is just far too important here as he is falling behind on the board. So I do like cashing in on the additional 2-drop over adding the lackey to your hand here. And yeah, Saiyan frustrated at the sight of the second evolve.
And his henchman falls asleep. This is a Sunstruck henchman. At the start of your turn, this has a 50% chance to fall asleep, aka not attack. So Saiyan upset with the lack of options. That 6-5 is just taking up space at this point. Sea Giant comes down for free, though. Bloodlust seems like it's going to be coming out here to help clear off a part of the board. So he's going to trade into some of these minions. Doesn't really have much of a choice with clearing the board here. I think taking out the Temple Enforcer might be better as opposed to the Light Spawn. The added benefit of the Light Spawn is that it does reduce an attack with each attack into its health total, so you could actually keep the totem, but I don't think it's worth it.
Saiyan frustrated all over again, as the one thing he had going for him in this spot is that bloodyface was running very low on resources, and then the very next turn, the first thing that Saiyan lays eyes on is a Witchwood Piper entering the fray as his giant gets cleared.
Yeah. Mogu Flesh Shaper and Desert Hair, so he can play his entire hand here. Playing his entire hand is not really a bad thing. Just that he needs one evolve and his hand becomes godlike.
Yeah, from Saiyan's perspective, he's thinking to himself, if I toss everything I have left in my hand onto this board, it only takes one Sandstorm Elemental to effectively end my chances in this game, so he's going to slow down. He's running out of time to find the evolve, but he still feels that that's his best chance of returning in this game.
Yep, it's looking Bloodyface favored from this position. Very much so. All of these resources coming in. The Quest Shaman outlasting. And off the back of double Desert Hair, double evolve. Seems like Bloodyface is gonna finish cleaning up Saiyan's board here. Saiyan down to quite possibly his last turn here.
Might have to be exactly evolved to bail him out of this spot, and based on his facial expression, which I saw before the card that entered his hand, it clearly was not. Saiyan visibly frustrated as his real resource engines just weren't available to him this game. Neither evolve ever entered his hand. The Spirit of the Frog was nowhere to be seen. He's forced to play a very fair game against an opponent who was doubling the value of each and every card in his hand, starting at turn 6, I believe.
I mean, Bloodyface is going to get a bunch of spells and a lot of board presence. As long as he doesn't whiff completely here. Stormbringer or Bloodlust right now.
He did not whiff.
Sure. Put your opponent down to critical life total or even just kill them.
I believe this leaves him at 2, which means Kobold Lackey. He chooses to trade. He could have set up Kobold Lackey with just 1 Lackey being lethal, but
yeah, not good enough. Saiyan's going to concede here, and that's going to be game 1 to Bloodyface. 3-game streak for Bloodyface. However, we saw this previously with Casey, who won 2-0 very quickly over Clento. Got that first game win very decisively over Yarla, but then Yarla was able to turn it back with 2 consecutive victories. So not a time for Bloodyface to let up. If he gets this win, though, out of this group of death, where the 3 other players with Muzzy, Saiyan, and Purple having a lot of accolades, that's pretty insane to me that only one of them is going to be able to go through to the top 4 here.
Yeah, I noticed Unisaddle sort of set up the narrative that of the 4 players in this group, Bloodyface is perhaps considered the biggest underdog based on player pedigree alone, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. Bloodyface was perhaps the single most successful and feared player out of the Americas region over the course of 2018 Hearthstone. I mean, he had an incredible year qualifying for multiple season championships, earned himself a lot of respect when his name sort of disappeared in the 2016-2017 era of Hearthstone. Came right back, and I think he deserves to be up here on the pedestal with any of these other players in America's Grandmasters.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a player to consider. I think most people would probably look at Saiyan's 2018 year and just say that usually the people who like do the best and last call tend to have the most impressive consistency across the entire year. And Saiyan's streak of 30-odd some victories in a row, series victories in tournaments, was unprecedented. I think Bloodyface's performance were pretty much isolated to just HCT events, but at the same time, it was, I mean, those were the ones that mattered the most. So Bloodyface would perform really well at playoffs, going to the finals of a championship, getting top 4 in another. It just so happened that he was one-upped both times by Bunny Hopper, who not only won a championship, but almost won another one right after. So Bloodyface, fantastic performance throughout HCT. Definitely one of the gems that was discovered through that system. Now we go into game number 2 with this Highlander Hunter. Saiyan probably putting a lot of faith in that aggro shaman. Most likely queuing up again, but we'll see what he ends up bringing to the table here.
Does look like he turns right back to the aggro shaman. I noticed there was a mind control tech in Bloodyface's Hunter list, which is fairly unique as far as Highlander Hunter decks go. That's not one you see every day. It's very possible that he foresaw this outcome of queuing this Hunter deck list into a shaman and then came prepared for that matchup with a card like the mind control tech.
I would think so. Mind control tech, I think, is very valuable to Highlander decks, because with Highlander decks and you play one copy of each card in it, you don't always draw the curve very consistently to have early game plays. And so, especially if you have a deck that has a lot of expensive cards like Highlander Hunter, it's pretty common for you to fall behind on the board early. And so Mind Control Tech helps you pull things back at least a little bit, so that way you have some early game plays. Spring Paw on 1, Bloodyface, having only 2 1-drops in the deck, finds one of them, chooses instead the tracking because he wants to use it reactively to try and take out whatever Saiyan builds up.
Snip Snap looks appealing to me here on Bloodyface's side. Just an incredible tempo play that was given to everyone all at the same time.
Assuming they logged in, there's people who have a normal non-golden legendary Snip Snap.
Oof.
And it's because they decided not to log in during that free Rise of the Mech event and was told Snip Snap was insane, which it is. Or you have people like Admirable who craft a non-golden Snip Snap just because they can.
Some sort of backward status symbol of sorts?
Yes. Having things that aren't very commonly collected. Desert Hare. Interesting pickup here, but knows that he could be walking directly into Desert Spear. I think that is the #1 fear.
The natural predator on the desert of the hare.
Desert Hare, Desert Spear. Oh yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that. Mind's kind of blown a little bit.
So
Also pretty savage.
For Bloodyface, he has now drawn the Snip Snap, and I believe he tracked over the Ziliax, which means this Ursatron is a vanilla 3-mana 3/3 minion in his hand. Something to keep an eye on.
Saiyan has this Thunderhead ready to go for a few turns now, but needs to kind of budget out his resources. Does he want to instead save the Sludge Slurper to generate tokens and then swing with the 1/2? He knows the threat of Coin Ziliax, which could be a problem to even get through any of the mechs. So this play is very wisely recognizing that Bloodyface doesn't easily answer this without Deadly Shot.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, is a moment of truth here for Saiyan, is he is very concerned about the possibility of Deadly Shot from Bloodyface's side. His hand is looking rather barren. Yeah. He's relying on this Thunderhead to stick and generate some incredible tempo on his next turn to really get his game plan rolling, because thus far, he hasn't done much, but that isn't uncommon for this deck, I want to point out. Even though it is a proactive, aggressive deck, Usually it's turns 3, 4, 5 that it really starts to get the ball rolling.
Whoa. This is a full board if Saiyan wants it, with Soul of the Murloc.
Right on cue. Saiyan goes from a whole lot of nothing to a whole lot of something. With one turn, this Thunderhead was on the board.
Is it Thunderhead time? Or sorry, is it Flesh Shaper time as well? I think so. When you have a 0-mana 3/4 rusher, I think you want to take it generally.
Yeah, I absolutely would take the Flesh Shaper here. Prior to developing my Soul of the Murlocs, probably, but Saiyan might be considering trading off one of these minions before Soul of the Murlocs to leave himself some board space. He so chooses. He does not, which makes sense to me. Against Hunters specifically, if they're not killing your minions, I think you're doing just fine here.
Yeah, looks like Saiyan's respecting all kinds of mechs, taking out the microbots so that way bloodyface can't use it. Bloodyface does not have a good Zephyrus opportunity to clear the board, but he does have Mind Control Tech. Mind Control Tech stealing Thunderhead would be great. Even Mogu Flesh Shaper would be awesome because it will inherit the rush ability. I believe if he does end up using Zephyrus, it'll offer him most likely like a swipe in some capacity if you coin out for it. It might even offer you like very cheap AoE that deals 1 damage like Fan of Knives. So if you manipulate it for 3 mana. So Bloodyface is considering all these possibilities, but I'm liking the Mind Control Tech to perhaps start things off here.
Engaging TC-130 until death. Okay.
Finds a rushing elemental.
Obviously not what he was looking for in terms of pure stats, but he at least does find the minion that has that rush keyword so he can immediately trade this in. And speaking of trades, the action Puffer never likes to take, but it is his responsibility for the time being.
Ooh my. So Saiyan has Spirit of the Frog, which will draw cards. Soul of the Murloc will draw not really anything. That is the one thing that has a question mark over my head, which is you do have Spirit of the Frog kind of peter out after 2, but the Mutate will draw a Lightning Bolt or Voltaic Burst, which could draw another 2-mana spell.
Crucially, the Mutate is also capable of drawing the Evolves out of your deck.
That is also true. At this point, Saiyan has a little bit too many souls going on here. Harvested a little too much. If he ends up having his board clear, he actually has, I think, not going to get full value off of stuff, so.
Still might consider cycling the Mutate here, even though he doesn't necessarily need any of his 1-mana spells at the moment. I'd like to thin his deck of them for the crucial cards such as Sea Giant or Bloodlust, even Vicina, that could close this game more efficiently.
It's true.
Does decide to value the Mutate instead.
Yeah, I think it's because he's anticipating Bloodyface to commit to a board clear here. He did see the Sandbinder draw an element from the deck, so we know Zephyrus is a very strong possibility. If the AoE is used, then he can use Mutate and Desert Hare next turn.
Dan, do we ever consider, and this is not an interaction I've seen before, but Zephyrusing or Timberwolf to get this Thunderhead off the board?
Oh. I've never seen Zephyrus offer a Timberwolf.
I haven't either. I honestly don't know how Zephyrus would respond, especially with how appealing Whirlwind might look there.
Yeah, I think if Whirlwind would be an offer, but Zephyrus tends to split up the decisions, right? It's not just 3 of the same thing all the time. Usually it's only 3 of like the same thing if it's trying to get game-ending burn. But usually it offers you a development tool, a removal tool, as well as sometimes a value tool.
Was this intentional sequencing from Saiyan? Because he did miss out on a 1/1 rush generation here.
Yes.
Suggests to me that he wants to go face with these Murlocs. He doesn't look concerned by it, so it doesn't seem like a sequencing error unless he's just shaking it off.
It would be nice to have that extra 1-1 to go into a 3-3.
Yeah, I mean, especially beside these other 2 1-1s, that's a nice clean clear on the Ursatron.
Zephyrs now enters the territory to offer you Brawl as a 5-mana AoE, but in this case, bloodyface may start feeling like it's clear Saiyan does not have Bloodlust, so
Your wish is my suggestion.
we'll see what Zephyrs ends up being picked off here. Now for Shadow Flame instead of Brawl, because it's more guaranteed of wiping almost everything. Swipe is also really good, given that you take out pretty much all the threats on the board.
I wonder.
Swipe this Thunderhead, it clears everything except the Life Drinker would be reduced to a 3-2, and another 1-1 Murloc would be summoned off the Thunderhead, but instead he goes for the Shadow Flame, gives up his Zephyrus, misses the 1 point of damage this swipe would have dealt to clear off more of Just Saiyan's board. Makes sense to me. This matchup is very much about tying down the threat of synergy that the Shaman has if its board grows.
Yeah, this right here is my biggest complaint about Underbelly Angler, is that it only works with itself and Sludge Slurper. Swarm of Locusts comes into the hand of Bloodyface. Are you kidding me? His Shimmerfly is just giving him such insane spells.
Unbelievable.
It was the Unleash the Beast in the game against Purple, and it was the Swarm of Locusts. Saiyan very defeated, slumping in his chair with no ability to capitalize on his board. He just keeps summoning. He keeps drawing more things to summon a board.
And Saiyan's close to out of additional ways to accrue resources. The Spirit of the Frog is gone. 1 Underbelly Angler is gone, so he would need to find the second Underbelly beside a Murloc to even start to generate enough resources to stay in the game, it feels. Let alone the fact that Bloodyface is about to firmly take control of the tempo aspect of this game.
Yeah, if it looks like to me this Evolve Shaman just fizzled out a couple games in a row. It's like if you can handle the early game board. Okay, Sludge Slurper with perhaps a miracle opportunity off of Ethereal Lackey. Okay, faces Lackey to summon card draw mechanisms for 2 mana minions, 2 drops.
No light.
Okay, we're really bargaining at this stage. We get Lost Spirit, which gives your minions +1 attack, which is kind of a miniature Power of the Wild. He's also dead.
He's very dead.
Dino Tamer Brand plus hero power, and that's gonna wrap it up. Bloodyface 4 W's in a row, sending Saiyan to the lower bracket and being the player to escape the group of death first amongst Bloodyface, Muzzy, and Saiyan, who have left to fend for one final spot.
Yeah, you can see Just Saiyan's frustration there. You can tell he didn't feel like he had a lot of urgency, a lot of agency rather, a lot of control over the outcome of that particular match. You mentioned the Soul of the Murlocs particularly that were in Saiyan's hand and how those don't really chain into any spells beyond the 2 cost. They really aren't in there because they're meant to be drawn, especially multiples of them in the early stages of the game. You want those Soul of the Murlocs in there because it's okay to draw one of them. They perform just fine, but really you want to be pulling those out of your deck for free off of the Spirit of the Frog. So the draw was incredibly awkward there for Saiyan. I've played this deck a lot. I feel for him. That was a below average result for him, but he's not done yet is the silver lining, and give him a large enough sample size, Saiyan tends to rise to the top.
Sure. I think that like we said, this deck has some rough spots on it that they need to smooth over. And we'll see if whether or not that ends up becoming something in the lower bracket, because Saiyan, Muzzy, and Purple are all going to have to fight over that final spot. We're going to start things off with Muzzy and Purple when we return. So don't go anywhere. We're halfway through America's broadcast for Playoffs Sunday number 2. The second half is coming up right after this.